Managers of Reddit past or present. What is your favorite I am the manager story? We had this insane and rude as hell old woman screaming and ranting she couldn't use a coupon for something the coupon was not even for. We stood there arguing a good 5 minutes as holding the line up. Her grown granddaughters were with her trying to calm her down and embarrassed as hell. Usually, I would have just given and let her use the damn thing, but she was being so rude I was not about to help her. She asked me to speak to my manager and I said I was the manager, and she didn't like that at all and said, well, I'll just go to the other location in town, they will take my coupon. And I said, not if you don't buy what it is for. She left. A few minutes later, we run out of a product we need, and I called another location, and they have some we can borrow, so I head over to get it. I walked into the store, and who did I see about to get in line for some food? The old coupon lady. So I wash my hands, gloves on up, and jump on the food line. The lady walks up to the counter, and I smile hugely and say, hello, how can I help you? Her granddaughters both gasp and go, oh, here we go. And the look on the grandma's face was priceless. She did not try the coupon again. Story 2. Automotive industry here. Quick lube style place. Franchise where owner only owns 2 locations. I'm the service center manager of one location and area manager over both. Customer rolls up and asks for an oil change. She drives her van in, hops out, and walks around the side of the building. Once we've finished the service, she walks back around and got in the van. She starts to pull the van out and starts yelling about her window, saying we broke it and that it wouldn't roll up now. I immediately pulled up the camera footage, clearly showing the window was down when she pulled in, and she didn't want to hear it. She promptly asked for the manager. I explained that I was the manager. She demanded to speak to my regional manager. I explained that I was the only person she'd speak to as the owner's fairly absent and doesn't handle petty store-level complaints. She called the corporate 1-800 number on the back of our invoices. Because we're a franchise, that complaint gets typed out and sent right back to my email inbox with a phone number to contact the customer. She wasn't pleased to hear my voice calling her to shut her down again. Story 3. When I was in high school, I worked at a candle store in the mall. For the most part, everything was returnable for store credit unless it was a sale item or holiday-specific stuff. I had a woman giving me the hardest time about not being able to return something that had obviously been used for an event and she no longer needed. She asked for the manager, who was there but wasn't satisfied with her answer. She went on to ask that we contact someone else about it, and it just happened that we had a visitor from head office at the store that day. Still not happy with getting the same response from all of us, she went on that general disgruntled customer rant of, this place is terrible, and I'm gonna tell everyone how terrible it is, and no one is gonna shop here. And in the best move I've ever seen, the woman from head office dragged a ladder out into the middle of the mall walkway and insisted that the woman start telling people about her experience right then and there. The woman quickly shut up and left. It was beautiful. Story 4. I worked at a restaurant where you filled in a ticket with all the ingredients you wanted on your pasta/pizza salad. There were large boards above a counter explaining how to order correctly. Once customers filled out their ticket, they could bring it to the register. During a weekend lunch rush with a line of at least 20 people, a woman comes up to the counter and tells our cashier what she wants. When the cashier told her that he needed a ticket, she got annoyed about the inconvenience, all while the line built up behind her. She demands to be given a ticket and begins filling it out right there. Seeing this, I come up to the cashier and tell him to ring up the people behind her while she takes her sweet time making the important decision of which pasta sauce she wants. She finally finishes, pays, and sits with her gaggle of companions. Later, she comes up to me and tells me that my behavior of having the waiting customers pay before her was extremely rude. I respond by telling her we try to make sure every customer gets speedy service, and her holding up the line because she didn't read our large signs was also rude to all of the other customers. She tells me that she'd like to speak to the manager to complain about me. With a gleeful and maybe slightly evil grin, I reply, "You already did. I'm the manager." The look on her face when she realized she wasn't going to get to Karen and feel vindicated about my mistreatment of her was lovely. And even though this was years ago, it still brings me joy. Story 5. Not my story, but my parents. They owned a franchise deli some 12 years ago. My mom was there full-time, making things run smoothly, and my dad would be there sometimes to help out when he wasn't working his tech job. Well, this lady came in once and ordered her food. When it arrived, she claimed that the kitchen made it incorrectly. My mom apologized for the inconvenience and calmed her meal, as well as gave her a certificate for a free sandwich next time the lady came in. So the lady came in again, orders her food, and again claims it was made incorrectly. My mom again apologizes and gives her another coupon for a free sandwich. This happened probably 1 or 2 more times. My dad had heard about it and was convinced they were just being scammed by this lady. Well, the next time the lady comes in, my dad happens to be working the kitchen. Sandwich lady comes through the drive-thru and orders. My mom recognizes her, and so to make sure everything is perfect, My dad makes her food himself and gives it to her. A couple minutes later, the lady calls the store to say her food has been made wrong again. My mom sets the phone down and goes to my dad and says, "The lady is on the phone and says you made her food wrong again." My dad says, "You tell that Karen I didn't make her food wrong and that she's never welcome in this restaurant again." My mom picks up the phone and says, and the lady goes, "I heard that. You tell that boy that he is fired." And my mom responds with, "Ma'am, that boy is the owner of the restaurant." The lady hung up and never returned. My parents both have a long laugh about that whenever they are thinking of all the stupid bullcrap that went on with that restaurant Story 6. Got a phone call from one of my salespeople. Guy wanted an item for the same price as Best Buy, except Best Buy didn't have them in stock on their website or in store, I checked. Plus, we don't have a price match guarantee, so I denied the price match. Got another phone call about 20 minutes later from the same salesperson, sounding frazzled for the same price match. I told him to hold on and decided to take a walk. So I show up and the guy is still there. And 3 of my guys are standing around with that "I just got yelled at for 20 minutes" look I've had on my own face far too often. I walk over and ask the customer what the matter was. I then make a big show of scanning the item and checking Best Buy's website and checking our internal POS system before sadly declaring that I sure would like to price match the item, but unfortunately, I cannot. Sorry. How would you like to pay today, sir? Guy freaks the duck out, yelling about how ridiculous it all is, and how we're violating our price match guarantee, and how he's going to email corporate. Unfortunately, sir, we do not have a price match guarantee, and I'm afraid we are unable to match that price in this particular instance. Now, would you like to pay for this item now, sir? I saw a price match guarantee on your website. I'm going to email corporate, sir. I'm afraid we have no price guarantee on our website. You may be confusing us with another company, sir. If you'd like to think about your purchase, we can always give you a price quote. You do have a price guarantee. I saw it on your website. You're being very unreasonable, sir. Perhaps you'd like to think about your purchase and complete this transaction at a different time. This is ducking ridiculous. And he took out his phone, snapped a picture of my face and a picture of my name tag, and stalked out over a 12 price difference. So I told the salesperson he could take an unlogged break, and I went back to my office. I looked up the guy's account and then Googled his name, a VP at some tech company in California. I put a note in his account, "Good luck getting a return authorization now, a hole. Inform the director of sales as soon as possible, 'cause see ya." He giggled when I got to the picture taking part of the story. Story 7, 22 years old, low-rung manager of a movie theater. Guy tearing tickets. Took a lunch break, so I am tearing tickets. Lady comes in like an hour before her show is supposed to start. The end of the film is still going on, and she is holding what I can only guess is an ice cream sundae made for 4 people. I tell her we aren't letting in for that film yet, and she can't bring outside food into the theater. She gets into a tizzy and tells me that she always, I say always, brings food into the theater, and no one has ever stopped her. I'm an impetuous 21, 22-year-old making 20 cents over minimum wage, so I tell her, it's been a rule since before World War II, you should get out more. She says, I want to talk to the manager. I say, sure thing, I'll go up to the office and he will come down. And then I walked up to the office, checked my Hotmail, I'm old, and came down and told her I'm the manager, and she couldn't come in with the outside food. Ended up giving her a refund for her ticket after she said, I know the owner of this theater, and he will fire you. It would have been nice if I'd been fired. I would have gotten unemployment. Story 8. Back in the early 2000s, I worked as assistant manager of a popular video game retailer. On a slow day, I had a guy come in and tell me he wanted to buy 2 PS2s, 2 copies of all the popular games, controllers, etc. Personal experience told me that something was fishy. I gathered up all he wanted and proceeded to ring it up. He whips out a credit card and tells me that this will be tax exempt. His credit card was for the local airport authority and says tax exempt on it with no number. So I asked the guy for a copy of his tax exempt certificate. He says that he doesn't bed one and anything charged to the card is tax exempt. I proceeded to tell him how tax exemption works and the fines that my company would face of I didn't follow the law. There was some back and forth, and in the end, I refused to process it as tax exempt. He refused to make the purchase unless it was tax exempt. He says, you just lost a big sale, buddy. I was already on my way back to the stockroom, so I replied back, well, I'll just go back and cry then. He got pissed and asked for the manager. I am the manager. Well then, who's your boss? I want his number. I proceeded to grab a business card and write down his name and office number on the back. After the guy left, I realized I might have given him the wrong number. I ended up calling the district manager anyway and explained the situation anyway. He agreed that he was right for refusing the transaction. I then called the airport authority and spoke to HR that explained that the person was just fired that morning and said that he didn't have the card on him. They were pretty sure the card hadn't been deauthorized yet and thanked me for notifying them. Story 9. I used to work for a particularly large ISP doing tech support. One day, the guy working next to me was dealing with a particularly rude business customer. The business customers were usually treated like kings, but this guy was having a particularly hard time even getting a word in. Eventually, he put up his hand to motion the supervisor came to talk to the customer. Right then, the owner of the company happened to be walking by with another one of the execs. I've met the guy a few times at the company's social events, and he is a really down-to-earth, employee-friendly boss. He asked what the issue was with his customer, and after it was explained, he took the headset and picked up the line. After listening for about 4 or 5 minutes, he said very flatly, "That's never going to happen, especially not when you have an attitude like a teenager." Again, listening for a minute before he said, "I don't have a manager. I own this company, and I don't have to listen to this crap from an a-hole like you, and neither do my employees. I'm terminating your account with us." He hung up, and I watched him disable this guy's account and add a note to the file. "Customer is an a-hole. Do not reinstate account, boss." Then he just handed back the headset and carried on about his day. Story 10. Worked as a supervisor in an optical retail store. We got issued name badges with our first name and job title written on them, and as I was only recently promoted, I put on my badge saying optical assistant, with my supervisor badge in my pocket. This isn't a massive issue, as normally when dealing with customers, if you tell them you're a manager, they respect that. Normally. Enter customer C that doesn't adhere to this rule. They had a problem that I was very easily able to offer a solution to, but was absolutely adamant they wanted to speak to a manager. C. Can you please get me your manager? Me. Actually, I am a manager. How can I help? No, get me your manager. You know, the person in charge? Me. Ma'am, I'm a supervisor, and I'm more than able to help you with any complaints. Unfortunately, the only other manager is taking care of yesterday's banking and is unable to leave. C. That's not good enough for me. Go get the manager. So at that point, I realized that I didn't have the correct badge on. So I turned around, switched them over, and turned back to the customer, me. Hi, I'm the manager. How can I help? She stormed out and put in a complaint against me. So worth it. Story 11. Found a senior cashier altering betting slips while I was covering for her manager. Worked as a relief manager for about 50 betting shops across 3 districts. Basically, if a manager was on annual leave or sick, I would go cover their shops. Normally, this was a senior cashier who could do the job, but the district managers liked having a manager there as well. One day, I get sent to a shop I've never been to, nor have I ever had any interaction with. The senior cashier was told they would be sending over relief to staff as she was down 3 staff for the day. So I go in as cover, along with somebody I'd worked with before, and is an excellent cashier. I get there a bit late, as I'd been in a different shop and had to collect the other cashier. As we walk in, the senior cashier starts saying to me that I'm late, and how dare I not be there on time. I should point out that the 2 cashiers are female, and I'm male, and considerably younger than both. I let it pass and go about the usual take that need to be done in a new shop. About an hour later, I get a message from our security control saying that the shop has 3 times the allowable cash on site. Message only shows up for me and nobody else, as I'm the manager. I ask where the safe is and the codes. Senior cashier goes ballistic, demanding to know where I got off asking about the safe and cash. Let it be for a minute, and replied to security control, asking them ring into the shop, asking about the cash. Basically, I didn't want to rock the boat just yet. Anyways, it can get sorted eventually, but I'm a bit suspicious of what's going on. With manager access to the system, I can see how much money is on the shop, what payouts are due, and amount of money at risk from future possible payouts. Altogether, it doesn't look too bad, with only about 10K in current payouts and about half of that in possible payouts. About reasonable for a shop of its size. I also check the bets to see what they are on. Senior cashier goes out to lunch, and a guy comes in with what he claims is a winning bet. Tell him that it's a loser. Sorry. Complains that it is a winner, and that the senior cashier told him it won. Guy leaves and thought that was the end of it. I go out to lunch, and when I come back, I have about 10 warning messages on my system about winnings and large payouts. Check the payouts, and all payouts are wrong. Not just wrong, but seriously wrong. Losing bets settled as 2,000 euros winners, that type of thing. One bet was the one I denied earlier. So I excused myself and rang security control to let them know. All for permission to revoke most of her permissions and only allow for taking bets. Basically, set her permission to a day 1 trainee. Went in and reset permissions. Next suspicious bet comes in, and she tries to pay it out. She can't and start to get flustered. Asks the other cashier to pay it out. As per policy, she asks me to do it, as I'm the senior person. I check the bet, and it's wrong. 50 euros win 50, where the horse fell at the first fence. I told her it's wrong and cancel the payout. She goes ballistic, tells me I can't do that, and she is the manager. Explained that I'm the current shop's manager, and that I had suspended her access. Further, until further notice, I was taking off working the tills or processing the bets. She was to sit at the staff table and wait until the end of the day to clock out. I also explained that I had reported the issue to security and was taking over the shop for the next week. Security came out to review the shop's logs and all bets. It turned out that she'd been changing bets for about 6 months and was taking a cut off the winning. I ended up running that shop for about 3 months with the other cashier and 2 new staff, as everybody previously working there was suspended. She and the manager were eventually fired, and she agreed to pay back the money in return for not being prosecuted. Story 12. I'm 25 and store manager at a textile store. One day there is an older couple. You can clearly see that these individuals live on the posh side of town. They are shopping for some new upholstery fabrics, and like the one I helped them find, but the color is not quite right. The lady asked me to just place an order for the color she would like. I reply that I cannot order items I don't carry. She does not like my answer, measures me with a glance. I have a lot of tattoos and stretched lobes, and says she would like to speak with the manager or somebody that works there every day. Like me working there as a ducking community service. I reply that I'm the manager, and if she can't find anything she likes, she can take her business elsewhere. Story 13. A full-grown man was throwing a fit that I wouldn't mark down a Thor hammer at a Halloween store because it was missing that little brown piece of cloth that was tied on the end of it. We are talking the most minimal issues. It was not the last one. I told him he could have a new one with the string on the end for full price, or this one without the string on the end for full price. Either way, the product's integrity was intact, and he was just being an ass. He demanded to see the manager, and I walked into my office and turned around and came back out. Hello, I'm the manager. What seems to be the problem here? He was so mad. Loved his face. He spiked the plastic Thor hammer on the ground, effectively shattering it, and stomped it out. I called the cops, gave the license number. He got sued by a major party store chain for a $12 hammer and lost. Note, said hammer was for his infant son, who couldn't even hold the hammer. I should tell you that half of the stuff in Halloween stores has been fixed. Hot glue and needle and thread, duct tape, you name it. The stuff is very, very cheap, and I would guesstimate that about 10% would come in damage from last year or shipping, and I'd have to sit before we open every year and fix it all. Repackage, mark down because things are missing or mis-sewn, swords or split down the seams. You're best off inspecting closely what you pick out when you go to these places because the odds are good things have been fixed or marked down because they are unfixable. Very rarely are things damaged out. Story 14. I manage a medical clinic. Our usual receptionist was out that day, so I said I would cover front desk, which is NB. We were looking at getting some building work done, and I'd arranged quotes from a couple of builders and were trying to arrange an appointment with one more. A guy rang the intercom and told me he had an appointment with us. Thinking he was a patient, I buzzed him in and tried to find him in the diary, but couldn't see him anywhere. He comes in and says, "Hi, I have a meeting here at 3 p.m. Me. Hi, let me try to find you in the diary. What's your name, please? Guy. It's boring name. Me. I can't see anything in the diary. Are you patient or is this a business meeting? I assumed he may have been a surgeon or doctor through meeting one of our clinicians. Guy. It's a business meeting. Your boss asked me to give her a quote for some building work. Me. Oh, I'm sorry. Clinic boss is out of the office at the moment as she has another meeting. She didn't let me know you were coming. I can reschedule for you if you'd like. Sorry about this. Guy sighs irritably. No, I have already scheduled this meeting with her and spoken with her. Are you sure you're reading that diary properly? She's specifically asked me to come. I don't think she'll be impressed with you when she finds out she won't let me through. Me. As I've said, clinic boss is out of the office. Guy. No, my meeting is with the manager. I sleep when I want. Yeah. Sticks hand over the desk to shake. Nice to meet you. My name is I sleep when I want, and we've never spoken to each other or arranged a meeting. Perhaps you haven't read your diary properly. We never did have that meeting. Story 15. I used to be in the management team of the customer service department for a national retailer. One time I went into a store in my hometown, not the area where I work, head office. So to be fair to the staff, why would they ever expect to have head office walk in? Anyway, I turned up a day before the release date for something I had my eyes on, and spent a while with a member of staff putting together a package of stuff, accessories, etc., as well as my main purchase. Came to about 250 pounds. He was incredibly rude the entire time, seemed confused that a woman would know so much about the products, and seemed to be taken aback that I came in and knew exactly what I want. Was very disinterested and dismissive throughout. Anyway, staff could get this particular product one day earlier than the public, which never happened. In fact, I think that product release was the only time it ever happened in the 2.5 years with the company. So when I had everything I wanted, I said, "Cheers. So here's my staff ID. Can I get staff discount on the lot and take it home now?" Well, then it kicked off. He argued my staff was fake Why would I go to the trouble of creating a plastic card with my name and photo on to get $5 off each thing? He argued that I cannot take it home earlier and said, get in line with the rest of the customers tomorrow, love. And I can't believe I had to do this. But I had to tell him to call customer services and explain that the manager of customer services was in his store and that he was refusing staff discount and to take the stuff home earlier, even though it is in communication sent to 300 stores across the country. Long story short, I got my stuff, never shopped there again, and when I got back to head office, sent a strong email to his area manager. Story 16. Your favorite corporate coffee shop. A lot of the times I have a headset on to listen to the drive-thru as well, in case they need help taking an order or grabbing something, so I listen to all the customer interaction. Usually the customer will get upset about something, ask for a manager, and then when I have to go to the window to talk to the customer, I have my headset on with me, listen to what they said happened, and will tell them, okay, but that's not what I heard on the headset, but if you want, I can also pull the recording as well. They leave. Story 17. I used to be a manager for a female clothing store at the mall. I'm a guy. Because of our inexpensive price points, our store policy did not provide any refunds for purchases aside from exchanges and store credits. So we were always having customer issues when they would try to return something. Working there for so long, you become numb to customers yelling at you and creating scenes. Hell, sometimes it's hard to keep yourself from laughing when they escalate to yelling over a $1.90 camisole. I had been there for 3 years and was very good at my job, one of the Sums and DM's favorites, really. So I did whatever I wanted, mostly with little repercussions. Well, one day, my cashier calls for customer service at the register. She has a customer wanting to return some heels she bought, claiming she just bought them yesterday. No receipt, of course, which I'll normally just make exceptions if they'll just get something else, because, again, our store policy was terrible. But these heels look like they has come out of the trenches of WWE 1. They were pitch black at the bottom, scratched, and has a weird stain at the top. It was obvious she wore the crap out in the club for the weekend and thought she could just return them. So I told her that we don't return any cash or original tender per store policy, and that in particular anything that, either way, it must be unused, unworn, and undamaged to be exchanged. Her shoes were not checking any of those boxes. Then comes the whole, I just tried them out at home and didn't like them. They were like that. I want my money back. The usual. I kept telling her calmly and clearly that because her shoes were used, it couldn't do anything for her. Then, of course, she went ahead and escalated the situation. Guessed. No, you don't understand. You need to give me my money back. Me. I can't do that. The shoes are damaged. Insert store policy here. Repeat the above a few times, and then she finally realized that I wasn't budging. So she asked me if she could talk to a manager. I thought this was off at first, but I then noticed that my tag was flipped towards my chest. We wore lanyards with the position we held hanging on a tag, so you couldn't see my position. So I decided this was the perfect moment. Me. Mom flips over tag that clearly says assistant manager. I am the manager. My cashier cracks a smile, trying to hold her laugh in, but clearly my intent, the customer, did not take this well. Guessed. And why the hell are you smiling? You think this isn't serious? Me. Mom, you're not dealing with her. You and I are the ones trying to figure this out. Guessed. You and I? You're a man. There's no way you can be a manager at a women's store. I want to talk to the real manager. Me. Mom, I am the only manager on duty here for the closing shift. Guess it. No. You know what? I want your name. Her name, my cashier, and the corporate number. I'm reporting you both. Me. That's no problem. I write down my name, a fake name for my cashier, and our store number. Here. You go, ma'am. Have a good rest of your day. She then storms out. The next guest is finally able to get run up. Other guest, I just want you to know that you handled that amazingly well. To my cashier. You have a fantastic manager. Story 18. My manager was called because some disgruntled customer was screaming at another employee. And when she walked over, he started screaming at her. He wouldn't leave the store and kept heckling her. So her response to this was to make a loud roaring sound at him and walk away. That shut him up. Story 19. Late 30s to early 40s, overweight, unattractive, and smelly guy was hanging out at the store being rude to customers and my employees. Things really escalated when he started harassing a woman who was one of our regular customers. I walked up to him with our store Polaroid. This was back when they still sold them. Told him to smile, took his picture and said, "This picture is going up where every employee can see it. If you ever come back into this store, 911 will be called and you will be removed for trespassing. Your behavior is not welcome in this store." He said, "You can't do that to me. I demand to see the manager." I pointed to my manager who was on the phone with the police. "He's the manager. I'm the owner. And unless you want to be arrested, I'd leave now." He waited around to be arrested. Turns out he had a record as a pedo and shouldn't have been in the store in the first place. His face wasn't the only Polaroid on our wall of shame. The store I owned was a comic book gaming store. We didn't have a wall of pedo. but we did have a wall of shame. People who we had to kick out for various reasons, such as theft, violence, disruptive behavior, or vandalism that you might expect, but also for harassment, poor hygiene, trying to cheat other customers, with trades and a more nebulous creep factor that stores that focus on such things suffer from. I strove to make the store I owned into a friendly local gaming store, and that meant I had to be downright draconian about who I would let stay based on how likely they were to spend their money versus drive away my other paying customers in Story 20. In 2006, I worked at a dry cleaner photo processing lab back in the days of film cameras, and slowly worked my way up through the ranks to become head of the photo processing lab. For the years before I got there, the photo lab tech job had the title of photo chick, because that's what the previous person had wanted to be called. When I got the job, I kept the title of photo chick I was a boy on my badge because the owner couldn't be stuffed changing the title on the pay slips and all the other paperwork, and I didn't really mind. About a year later, some angry lady complained that the title was offensive, and to avoid issues, the owner changed the job title to head of the photographic development and processing laboratory. End of story right. Wrong. Lady came back in a few weeks later and complained that her photos were not done right, so I offered to reprint them for her for no charge. She didn't like this and demanded she speak with the head of the department about it. She didn't take the news that I was the head of the department too well and demanded to speak with the store owner. So I go get him, and he talks to her about it while I go about my business reprinting this lady's order, which takes about half an hour. She wasn't happy at all about this and demanded a refund, to which I refused, as we have a no refund policy unless something goes completely wrong with the order. She screams a little at the owner, who takes her reprints back and tells her to get out. As she's leaving, she's saying something about how she'll get us good. A few weeks later, the police rock up and tell us we've been summoned over the attack of Lady, and she was suing the store and the head of the photo department. I am annoyed because I hate wearing a suit, and the owner's mad because I'm the only person in the department, so he'll have to close for the day, losing money. Fast forward to court day, and the lady is wheeled in a wheelchair and is once again pissed to see that I'm there. A few back and forth comments are made by her lawyer about how I attacked their client and caused lifelong injuries, and how they want damages paid to her from both the company and myself. I get asked to tell my side of the story. She gets flustered when I say she threw a hissy fit because I was the head of the photo lab. Owner then produces CCTV footage from the day that shows her ranting and yelling at the owner while I'm behind the counter doing my job, and the cameras from the car park show her kicking a lamppost and slamming her hand in the door of her car. Case closed. Court rules in favor of us, and she has to pay a few $1,000s in damages, as the owner had to close the photo department for the day because of this. And that's how an old lady ended up paying $2,500 for $8.50 worth of photos. Story 21. I was the GM of a beautiful new big-name hotel at 2324. My AGM was a woman in her 50s, me being mixed. Many occasions occurred where I was speaking with a guest over an issue, and they demand to speak to a manager only for me to say, I am the manager. No, the real manager, please. The look on their faces when my coworker told them I was in fact her boss with a huge smile. Luckily, my AGM was a kick-ass woman, and we got a kick out of this. Story 22. Many moons ago, I worked in a gun store. I have a lot of these stories from there, but we'll go with this one. Guy comes in with a friend, and the friend decides to purchase a handgun. He's got a pistol purchase permit and state ID, so his salesman started the paperwork. During the transaction, the guy doing the paperwork took money from his friend to pay for the handgun. The salesman sees it and comes to me for advice. By federal law, this could be considered a straw purchase because it now appears the guy is buying the gun, but the friend is claiming it is for him. Now, we never questioned our salesman when they wanted to stop a sale. The reason didn't matter. We immediately backed them up on stopping the sale because they can see things others can't. So he came to me to tell me he was stopping the sale on suspicion of a straw purchase. I was the assistant manager at the time, but my immediate supervisor was the general manager. So I handled all floor sales issues. I walked back to the table with the salesman to back him up when he stopped the sale. The friend who was doing the paperwork was visibly upset, but didn't argue. The guy who passed the money completely lost it. He began screaming and hollering and cursing. Both left the store. 5 minutes later, he comes back in the store, wanting to talk to a manager. When I tell him I am the manager, he lost it even harder. He starts screaming and waving a purchase permit in my face. That was apparently his, as he claimed, but I couldn't read it with him waving it around. Now, I'm not a small girl, but this dude easily had a foot in height and about 100 pounds on me, so he thought he was intimidating me. He tells me he wants to talk to me immediate boss. Boss man comes out. He's a Marine who tops the scales on this dude even. He looks at the guy, looks at me, and I had the face displayed, and he says, "Nah, you're good. She's got this," and vanishes. Now the guy is so angry he's speaking in a high-pitched voice. My customers are all stopped and watching this go down. The dude decides to start hitting things, so I casually reached up and got him by the back of the neck and walked him out of the store. That was a hell of a walk of shame for him because the customers all started clapping and mocking him for being bested by a woman, of course. Story 23, working at a call center, we get some crazy people. My department's specific role is to resolve escalations that normally would go unresolved. We are the highest form of representation that people can speak with at my company. So we had this one customer who we called about her gift card that was being sent to her and advised we would send the request to our GC people. A few days later, we called her back and she was adamant that we offered her $900. My coworker originally took it, but she left me the voicemail for some reason, wondering where it was. After confirming with him that he didn't offer it, reviewing the call, and trying to figure out where she got this idea, I called her and said, "We don't know what you're talking about." Initially, she accepted, but about a week later, she came back with the same scenario, adamant that someone with my same name from the head rebates offered it to her. I told her, "We are market reps, and the rebates department is wholly unconnected to us, so we would not have access to the notes from them, as they are a separate company with corporate." She said, "Well, I want to speak with a supervisor." And at this time, I told her, "Unfortunately, I am the highest form of representation you can speak with." After reviewing the call from my coworker, we have confirmed that this check was never mentioned, so we will not be able to send this, period. She gave me the same sob story about how her father was in jail being abused and needed to get him out, and I'd like to speak with your supervisor. Eventually, she said I have notes on who I spoke to, so to make her happy, I agreed to review the notes, and she faxed it over to us. I was not about to give her my work email. And it was 1 pages of handwritten notes with a cover page stating, "I'm a Catholic and I live by the 10 Commandments. For you to call me a liar is absolutely horrible of you." I reviewed all her notes. There was no mention of $900, and half of it was not even legible. So I called her back to further deny the claim. After I let her have her spiel, I told her I am the supervisor and the highest form of representation available to speak with. We will not be sending the VEC, and your gift card will be arriving within a standard ETA. Now, is there anything else I might be able to help you with, or any further questions you may have for me at this time? She sobbed a few times and hung up, but it was one of my best moments I felt as far as denying someone's claim, and she never came back. Story 24. I just told another story from the same store a few days ago. Here's another. Preface. Retail store, fancy home goods. Some of our rugs were a few $1,000s. My manager was new to being a manager. She'd been a loss prevention hotshot at a major big box store that closed down. Now she was just a store manager and didn't quite know what she was doing. I was 17, looked nice for the interview, and then started showing up in my normal attire, which was normally black jeans, black cowboy boots, a big Motorhead belt buckle, my long hair, and my baby blue employee shirt, which I wasn't even supposed to have. Those were only for managers, but they didn't have any others. To add, I am around 6'2". We had a lot of problems with what we called sugar daddyism. Women coming in and trying to buy thousands of dollars of stuff with credit cards that didn't match their names whatsoever. This caused more than a few women to storm out calling us every rude thing in the book. This was a well-to-do area. A lot of financial sector people and wealthy immigrants, especially from Russia. One day, same thing happened, except this time the woman came back with sugar daddy. Big dude dressed business casually with a lot of ring. Now, he could have just used his own ducking credit card to make the purchase, but no, he came in just to scream at my manager, this poor woman in her 30s who had no clue what she'd signed up for. This guy was shorter than me, but bigger around. Didn't care. Screaming at a woman, especially one that much younger. This guy had to be late 50s, his girl was probably 28. Rich people, right? I heard the screaming. I was back in the stockroom unloading boxes. I came up and saw this guy screaming at my manager, slamming his fists on the till. Not cool. My manager was basically against the wall looking horrified. I walked up behind him, tapped him on the back. He wheeled around, still yelling, and just sort of look up at me, then down to the boots, then back up. I said, "Hi, sir, I'm the store manager. Whatever is going on, your issue is with me now." He grumbled, basically grabbed his girl, and stormed out without another word. About a week later, the police came in. They wanted our security footage from the day these fine folks visited us. From what we gathered, this guy had been beating the crap out of her, and they were gathering any video of them together they could. Never found out anything else, but I hope that woman was okay. Story 25. I have the complete opposite, though it applies. I worked at a high-end shoe store for a few years, full service, offered polishing and other services as well. Anyways, I'm a suburban white kid in 11th grade, and I work with all black dudes, one of which obviously was the manager. We were in an upscale-ish mall in a pretty well-off area, and a ton of people would walk past my manager, who was very clearly a higher up compared with us, and my other much older coworkers, and go to me about questions they had or service. You could say it's just a coincidence, but the amount of times I would hear someone say, "Well, I'm going to go and talk with your manager," and point to me at which case my manager got to pull the old "I am the manager" move was far too often. At least once a month. The embarrassment on their faces was always a nice thing to see, but sometimes they just walk out. This also coincides directly with the amount of people expecting to be able to haggle the price of a $350 boot down to less than half price in an upscale store. They would be very upset to discover that they could not do anything even close to that, and nothing was ever on sale. There were tons of other instances of more blatant, and it was really disheartening, to be honest. Felt pretty awful to be unwittingly involved based. Got to crap on them in the back room for hours though, so that was fun. Always remember, if you're being even slightly annoying, all the employees will absolutely roast you when you leave. Not that this matters per se. You're the customer and entitled to what you deserve. We'll just make fun of you for it regardless. Story 26. I'm a 21-year-old girl, and I'm a senior staff member, junior manager at a tree nursery. Unfortunately for me, I look like I'm about 15, and this seriously ruins my credibility with old people who think that just because they've been around the sun 60 times, they know more about gardening than me. Anyway, one time I was speaking to an older woman about an issue she was having with a new plum tree. She did not like my advice on how to fix the issue and continued to insist that something was wrong with the tree we had sold her. Since she didn't like what I was telling her, I radioed for one of my coworkers to come speak with her. The coworker I called is an older man who is junior to me at the store, but very knowledgeable and polite, and I assumed she would listen to him. I stepped away to go back to what I'd been doing before, while my coworker listened to the lady describe her issue so that he could tell her the exact same thing that I had told her. He told her the same thing that I had recommended, and the lady became upset and demanded she speak to the best tree expert we had on shift. Well, that was me. And when my coworker radioed me and I came back over, the look on the lady's face was priceless. She gathered up her leaf samples in a huff and said she would go somewhere else before stalking off. Story 27. I don't have any outlandish story to go along with it, but the first time I got to say, "I am the manager," was one of the most satisfying things I'd ever said. Story 28. This, or something very similar at least, happens fairly often. Working in retail, someone is always pissed off about something. I work at Staples and people get so angry about some of the littlest things. Yesterday, a woman had driven from a town a little bit away, 30-45 minutes at most. Our local store to her had closed, so she had to travel to our location instead. She runs a business in this town and has a contract with Staples, so I know it wasn't just as easy as going to another office store. There's a little more to it. She was very upset that her old store had a smaller type of calendar than what we had. When I asked her to elaborate some more, she couldn't. She didn't have any extra information. Literally all she knew was that she wanted a smaller calendar, and we carry literally almost 40 bins of nothing but planners and different types of calendars. I showed her everything, but it definitely wasn't close to what she had in her imagination. She wanted to speak to the manager so they would know what she's talking about. When I responded that I am the manager, I've been at this store for 6 years now, and Mom, I'm sorry, but I don't have a different type of calendar in the store. She lost it. Threw her arms up as if she didn't ever know what day it was or something. I understand some things, like maybe being out of something your company must have to operate, but a calendar? She got snippy and was about to walk out when I stopped her and offered to maybe look online for a different option. It's what we're trained to do. And she just kept on walking. I doubt I'll see her again. If I do, I'll try to help her, of course. I just hope everyone that has a story like this, whether it's expired coupons or price matching, being out of stock or something, rings up wrong. Just know that sometimes things go wrong. Story 29. Manager at a call center. I'd get asked all the time if I could transfer to another manager. The answer was always, as I am perfectly capable of handling your situation, I am unable to transfer you to someone else at my level. You can, however, feel free to end this conversation, call back, go through the ranks, and maybe get someone else who will provide the same information. This normally lead to a rant on how privileged they are and how garbage this is, which lead me to respond an empathizing statement along the lines of, if I did this to myself, I'd be pretty angry to... Is there anything else I can address for you? Story 30. I used to be a delivery driver at a place that rhymes with Lissa Gut and stupidly accepted a position as a manager. They barely made $1 over minimum wage at the time. All the cash was in delivering pizza and being a server. Our store location was one of the busiest with a large delivery area. We would basically have bare minimum staff for crap tons of business at night. A driver, a cook, a manager, and a server. You know, corporate greed. That night there were like 20 deliveries on screen and 45 minutes until close. I decided to take some of the deliveries myself, considering I used to deliver, so knew the best routes and what orders to group together to get them out the quickest. There are loads of backroad trailer parks in the area, with roads that can destroy your car if you're not careful. I ended up delivering to a place like that. Speed limit was 25 and I was doing 15, trying not to ruin my suspension and these ungodly potholes. There is one spot I forgot about and didn't slow down. The left back tire hit it and my care bounced a good bit. I make it back to the store and phones are ringing. Server's too busy with customers up front. Cook is too busy on the make table and magically cutting pizza somehow. My driver, of course, was on a delivery. It's this ducking git yelling about how a driver is driving like a maniac, ramping potholes in his neighborhood, if you want to even call it a neighborhood. I told him I was the driver and what happened. He started yelling more and asked to speak to the manager. I told him I was the manager and now this guy is about to have an aneurysm. He started to demand free food and all kinds of crap. He wasn't even a customer. I just kept saying no. After he wouldn't let up and kept demanding to speak to corporate, I told him I'd call the city and have his home condemned because it was unfit for living. He calmed down after that and hung up. It would have been easier to just let him have free food, but duck that. I'm not staying even later for that guy to get free food. We knew we were going to end up being there 3 hours past close that night, working on dishes and cleaning. Another 30 minutes for that git is not worth it. Story 31, manager for a soaps, lotions, and candles store here. My favorite one is when we caught a serial shoplifter. I saw a woman being sketchy and walking around all shifty eyes. I tried approaching her, and she bolted, but I saw some of our sprays in her bag. So I called security to give them heads up, as well as a detailed description of her clothing and bag, which was a huge shopping bag from a store, not from our mall. Typically, we don't prosecute under 500. 2 hours later, security calls and asks me to come back to the mall office to identify item. I had double coverage at that point, so I walked back. The woman was sneering at me, but all of the stuff she had shoplifted from our store, as well as others, was on the table in front of her. I filled out a report and didn't think anything of it. The next day, she showed up at our store screaming that she wanted me fired because I filled out a false report and made security track her. My associate said, "I'll just call the manager." I stepped out from the back, smiled when I saw who it was, and said, "I'm the manager, how may I help you?" She was furious, but silently left. I then tipped off mall security. She was back, and she was banned from the mall. Story 32. Woman mad about bolognese sauce got kicked out by owner. I was working as a hostess at a well-known pizza and pasta place. It was a Friday night, and we were completely slammed. This woman orders a decent-sized order over the phone and asks to have soup bowls of bolognese sauce rather than the usual side cup it comes in. I write a note of it, but just charge her for the side because we have no way to charge for a soup bowl of it. When she came in, I was taking an order over the phone, so the other hostess collected the order for her without realizing the sides were supposed to be soup bowls. I get off the phone as she is checking her order before she leaves, and she starts screaming at the other hostess about how it is supposed to be soup bowls. I chimed in that it's my mistake and quickly go grab the soup bowls to hand to her. Screaming the whole time, she goes off on how our restaurant is crap, and every time she comes in, someone messes up her order, and she wants to speak to the manager. We're slammed, so the GM is working in the kitchen, and the other manager is behind the bar. So I go to the back office and grab the owner, apologizing profusely for bothering her because she doesn't usually deal with these things. The owner comes out and asks what the problem is, and this woman is red in the face screaming. When she is finally able to get a word in, the owner says, "You have your soup bowls now, as well as 2 free sides of bolognese." I don't see how these hostesses could have handled this situation any better, and begins explaining that she doesn't like that this woman is screaming at her workers and holding up the lineup of people behind her. The woman decided this isn't good enough and demands to speak to the owner. The owner had a smirk across her face and calmly replied, "I am the owner. Now get the duck out of my restaurant." The woman left in a huff, babbling about how she was taking it to corporate. It was my favorite moment working there, hands down. Story 33. I worked as a library manager for a year. I was the only employee, small town library, so they couldn't afford too many employees at once, and had to do roughly 3 to 4 people jobs. Because it was a small town with a bad reputation, many families there were low income and couldn't afford computers or internet, so they would often come to the library to use our computers. Same with their children. There were some cases with various children where it was quite clear their parents did not believe in discipline, besides grounding the kid. One in particular was a real hassle, but his mother was worse. She was this middle-aged woman who apparently had her son later in life, was a local substances dealer, and believed that her child was an absolute angel, innocent in every situation, unless there was overwhelming evidence to the contrary. One day, her son was the worst he had ever been, disrupting other kids who were reading or wanted to be left alone, taking books off the shelves when I wasn't looking and leaving them on the floor, yelling and screaming, the whole shebang. I tried calling his mother 3 times throughout the day and had no luck. Only when I finally closed the place and everyone had left was I finally able to get a hold of her. So after explaining everything, she starts questioning my ability to do my job, blaming my inability to control her son on the fact that I was only 18, and claimed that she had been home all day and never received any calls from me. I admittedly almost lost my temper with her when she called me a typical lazy millennial. I told her that it was not my job to control or discipline her child for how he behaves, and that it was her job instead. Well, apparently that really pissed her off. She went on a little rant about how her child wasn't to blame, and then threatened to call the manager of the library. I told her to go right ahead, and she hung up. About 5 minutes later, I get a phone call, give the friendliest sounding greeting I can muster, and sport the biggest grin imaginable when she realizes that I was the manager. Story 34. Not a manager, but customer service supervisor, because I was only part-time. The job is basically that I supervise/lord over the cashiers at the front end of the store, handle discounts for damaged items, questions, custom orders, and more importantly, Koreans. At this store, name tags had their position on it as well as their name. I started out as a cashier and still had my cashier name tag. I also had my supervisor name tag. So on this particular shift, I couldn't find my supervisor name tag, wore my cashier one into work. Didn't really matter anyway. Most busy days, I was on the register as well. I hear from my manager that they'd found my supervisor name tag left behind the day before and had left it in the sorting room for me. I decided to keep it there and just wear my cashier tag. In comes Terabed customer. The woman is buying something like 2 carts jammed full of garbage discount clothing and shoes, and she has swapped the tags on basically everything. Luckily for her, I'm the cashier who's seen some crap, and so I know her game right away. I'm peeling sales stickers marked for shoes, but stuck on dresses off and ringing things up as their real price. I remember she had on expensive name brand purse, $99.99, marked with the sales tax, from a ducking baby bottle, $9.99. My manager didn't train any fools. She gets mad, pissed, thinks I'm discriminating against her somehow because middle-aged white ladies have it so hard. I shed a single tear, explaining the procedure to her. She calls me an idiot. I tell her it'll be $9.85, please, cash or card. She begins to scream. One of my cashiers walks over to try and help. She calls him a slur. I tell her there's no need for that kind of language. She demands to see my supervisor. Okay, I say, full grin. The cashiers are all watching me. My cool manager in the background looks like he's about to hit himself. I went into the sorting room and grabbed my supervisor's name tag. I walked back out, took my damn sweet time taking off my cashier tag and swapping it out in front of her. I tell her total. Oh no, she forgot her wallet in the car. She'll be right back. She did not come back. Story 35. Sort of related. I was an intern in a startup company, and the support department was myself and another intern. People frequently call support, then demand the manager. Our manager was never available, so we would just pass the phone back and forth and pretend to be each other's manager. If someone called, asked for the manager, then asked to be escalated again, we would either put on a different voice and swap it back, or take it to someone else in another department, write a script for them, and have them take the call. Story 36. Not a manager. Have never been a manager. But this story is a proud moment for me. I was a lifeguard at the local rec facility from 1721, summers and winter break when I was in college. All posted pool rules indicated that lifeguards were empowered to use their own judgment about pool activities and shut down anything that was too unsafe at any time. People mostly respected us. One day I was guarding near the lazy river and had to jump in to save a little boy who was going under. He was 4 and not wearing a life jacket. When he and I got out of the pool, him crying hysterically, his mother, who was not swimming herself, rushed over and started yelling at me. He was fine. What is your problem? I told her, ma'am, he can't swim, and the water is deeper than he is tall. The lazy river is full of people, and it's simply not safe for him there. I started filling out the accident report required every time a rescue occurred, and she kept careening at me and tried to leave the scene several times. I told her that under no circumstances was the boy to return to the lazy river. He could only go in the kiddie pool, and only with a life jacket, which we provided. The mom demanded to speak to my manager, so I knocked on the office door. Joe, former lifeguard, came out. It was literally his first day on the job as manager, after training. Super chill guy. He took stock of the situation and said, "What says goes." Lady flipped out and said, "I've seen you before. You're only a lifeguard, not a manager." And he said, "As of today, I actually am," and shut the door in her face. Story 37. Many years ago, I managed a restaurant in Missouri. Group comes in for Sunday brunch, led by maybe the rudest woman I've ever encountered. Not sure if she thought treating my staff like crap would win her friends among her group, or if she was just a great A, but within 10 minutes, she had one of my waitresses in tears. So I put my best server on the table and hovered nearby. The server, Doc, was from Arkansas and had a great Arkansas accent. He walks over and introduced himself to the table And the woman immediately says, "Oh my God, you sound like a dumb hillbilly. Isn't there a waiter worth a damn in this whole restaurant?" Which was weird because she also had a pretty thick southern accent. But I guess there's a difference. Upon hearing this woman start berating my best server, I intervened. "Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear. Is there something wrong?" The woman turns to me. The rest of the table was now busy looking anywhere else and says, "Yes, there is. Every waiter and waitress in here sounds like an ignorant redneck. What kind of place are you running here?" I looked at her and smiled. "Sorry to hear you're dissatisfied. Tell you what, why don't you pack up your stuff and get the duck out of my restaurant, and I'll make sure you're never served here." Again, frankly, you sound like the most ignorant person in here right now, and I'm not interested in serving vicious Koreans like yourself. Go eat someplace else. She hit me with the usual, "How dare you? I'll talk to the owner. I'm not going anywhere, blah, blah, blah." But I told her no one talks to my staff that way, and unless she feels like getting arrested on a Sunday afternoon, she'll be out the door in 5 minutes. She left. I had to comp the tables around them because I got pretty heated and used some language that isn't appropriate for Sunday brunch. But all in all, was totally worth it. Pretty sure my staff would have run through was for me after that. Story 38. I'm a valet manager and at the time was managing at a country club. I remember around noon I saw some kid move a cone that the inside management put out for a wedding coming in later that day. I thought nothing of it until my coworker a half hour later tells me, "I thought people weren't supposed to park in the cone spots." I said, "They're not?" He replies, "Well, that guy did." The guy is nowhere to be found and we had to work around this guy's car. Eventually he comes back after we didn't need the cones anymore, and I walk up to him and asked if he had parked over the cone that was left there. He got very agitated and aggressively replied, "No, there was no cone there." I said, "There was when I got here, and that was before you." He was obviously flustered and turned red when I said, "I saw your son move the cone when you guys got here." At this point, he is very upset and asks for the manager. And to contribute to this thread, I said, "I am the manager. Hi, I'm Wheaties." He ended up talking to the manager of the country club who contacted my boss, only for my boss to tell me, "You're not wrong. I would have done the same thing. But at this account, we have to pretend they're all right, even when we know they're wrong." Story 39. Worked for a consumer electronics chain for many years. One of the stores in our town was a shallow storefront in a large shopping center. It was 20 years old, run down, and due for closure as the company was concentrating on full-range stores. It had no back area or storage outside the sales floor. It was 5 meters by about 20 meters. Just enough space to have hang sell on the walls and one row of shelving. Most days there was only one staff member rostered. Sometimes it was me. A staggering number of people who would come into that store, ask for an obscure item, and be surprised when we didn't stock it despite seeing how small the store was. One day, a woman comes in and inquires about a specific phone charger. I look it up and explain I don't have any at this store, but it is available at our nearby full-range store, 5 minutes away. She goes ballistic telling me that it's ridiculous we can't stock chargers for every feature phone, which was a lot circa 2008. I explained that we're a small store and carry a limited range. I can have one ordered in for her if she would prefer. At this point, it is me and this woman in an otherwise empty, tiny store. She restrains her emotions for a moment and asks, "Can I talk to the manager?" I stop, pause, look around the store and just say, "Ma'am, I'm the only person here. I'm not sure where you think a manager's hiding, but they're not." After a long tirade about my smart arsery, she eventually leaves. I doubt I'll ever understand why she was so angry. Story 40. This is kind of a recurring problem. Fortunately, as a manager, I only have 2 people above me, the general manager and the owner. We have a woman that works for us, is the sweetest woman in the world, but she's a larger woman, older, 65, and comes from a farming and military background. So she is strong and stocky. Unfortunately, she is often mistaken for a transgender person, even though she is not. Not that we have a problem with that either. Anyway, multiple people have refused to do business with her based on her appearance. We do have booking fees at our establishment, and anyone who sets an appointment with her is subject to the cancellation fee if they cancel without notice. I have had her come out to greet clients, and as soon as they see her, say, "Nope," and turn around. Without getting into detail, our business has nothing to do with appearance. I then charge them a cancellation fee. Often, I get a call a few days later asking what the charge is. Myself, or my subordinates, say it is for canceling service without proper notice. At least 4 to 5 times a year, I get to hear some a-hole try to stammer to me why he should get a refund. I always make them say it, as most of the time they try to dance around the issue. I had a last-minute thing come up. "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, but your personal life can't affect our business arrangement." She wasn't what I expected. "Oh, in what way?" No sir, I don't." Well, cue, lots of stammering, etc. I will not give refunds for this. My boss won't and my owner won't. If they really want to push chargebacks against us, they can, but we aren't about to let people do this. Story 41. Didn't happen to me, but to my manager, and I was working at the security firm, and one of my senior coworkers was really mad at the manager. It all came from him thinking that we were taking on a lot more jobs than we should, office politics, etc. So my coworker drags me with him into the manager's office and starts stirring up all this crap. Little does he know that me and the manager go way back. I happen to know he's basically the majority owner. I start to feel that he's laying into the manager a bit too hard, saying he's going to talk to the board and owners, when the manager just replies, "I am the board." Anyway, that's how he became emperor of the galaxy. Story 42. Bartending one night, these two girls come in, treat me like garbage, run me ragged, and don't tip. Afterwards, they come up to me, each with resumes in tow, and ask for the manager on duty. I had the biggest and brightest smile when I told them it was me and held my hand out for the resume. They paled and went downstairs, lounge upstairs, dining room downstairs, and I figured they would leave. I got paged to the front hostess stand by the hostess, and there were the girls. They thought that I was lying to them. It was beautiful. Story 43. Not my story, but my buddy's. We were working at a club and he dragged a guy out. The guy was belligerent, but once outside, he stopped fighting and transitioned to being a yippy dog that barks yet runs away when challenged. He was about 5'6" and skinny, but my buddy was Samoan, about 6'1" and over 400 pounds. Here's the conversation that followed. Former customer: "I'm going to get you fired tomorrow." Bouncer: "Okay, have a good night." Former customer: "I know the manager, now the chief of security, and the GM are standing there, but they won't get involved in a legit removal unless there's a danger." Bouncer: "What's the manager's name?" Former customer: "Bouncer's name." Bouncer: "You know him?" Former customer: "Yeah, he's my boy." Bouncer: "Can you describe him?" Former customer: "Yeah, he's a big Samoan dude." The actual manager and the GM were doing their best to keep a straight face, as is my buddy, who is standing toe-to-toe with the dude he claims to know, and the only person of Samoan descent on staff. My buddy, constantly the professional, just said that he'd be waiting for the call. Later that night, we told the rest of the crew to a lot of laughter, and the manager made my buddy do the closing duties. Story 44. I work at a dollar store where the #1 rule above all is to not let a customer leave unhappy. I turned 20 back in May. Up until the new guy was hired a few weeks ago, I was the youngest employee by at least 27 years. Now, the new guy is only 12 or so years older than me, but I'm also a manager. This lady is buying a bunch of stuff. She's a regular, so I know she's a pain in the ass with how specifically she wants things bagged. What I wasn't ready for was her trying to pay with a card, it was not working, and she yelling at me to cancel the order. This is after returning and re-ringing up items 3 times. I can't cancel in the middle of payment, as she had already paid for the food part of her order. Food stamps. I told her this. She told me to try anyway, so I did, 3 times. She asked for a manager. I told her that I am the manager. She then asked my employee to try because he's older and might know. He is 61, but I'm still his manager. He couldn't do something like that without my code anyway. He happened to be walking in as it was the end of his break. He says, "No way I can do it. If anybody had the ability to, it'd be a mighty map leaf." Did I mention that all of this was close to closing? Because it was. So she makes me call my boss on her day off at 9:40 p.m. We close at 10, and she was asleep, just so she can say exactly what I was ducking saying. Story 45. I had a lady come up to me and ask to speak to a manager. She obviously just wanted to post something solicit at our store. We are a nationwide chain. I said, "I am one of the managers on duty. How can I help you?" She looks at me, tells me I'm too young, and asks for another manager. I am a 33-year-old, 300-level lady. The only thing that makes me look young is the fact that I wear neon highlight yellow glasses and a big cheesy smile all day. I said, "Honey, I'm way older than you think, and no, you can't leave those pamphlets here because we can't post anything that's not corporate approved." She stares at me. I tell her I'm 33. She gets embarrassed and walks out. I guess my glow helps keep me looking young. Story 46. I managed a video game store, and this really cool dude came in with his super hot wife, and they bought a pair of DS's and a bunch of stuff huge total. Apparently, he was some higher up in the Air Force, and they like to play games together while traveling. Well, he dropped his military ID somewhere and called later to ask if we had it. We did not. Later in the day, I got a call from one of my underlings that said I was indeed in our store and fell behind the safe. They found it while trying to grab a debit card that also fell back there. I was off but lived nearby, so I said I'd come take care of it. In the few minutes it took me to get there, the wife came back and was livid. She thought we intentionally kept his ID and was making the usual profane threats of legal action, while I crawled under the counter with one of those little grabby things that have an lead on the end. Well, after an inordinate amount of time, I finally grabbed this damn thing and presented it to her. Her immediate response was, I demand to speak to your manager right now for the time I've wasted. To which I replied, you're looking at him. She then dressed me down for holding the ID and taking forever to find it. To which I replied, it's a shame you feel that way because your husband has been driving over town looking for it. I was then called a liar. Then I showed her the texts from him on my cell. She thought he had already left town. Apparently he, too, feared her wrath and lied about being gone already so as not to have to spend any more time with her. Story 47. I used to manage a non-chain sandwich place when I was 17 because the owners were oafs and no one else worked as much as me. They hired a woman in her mid-40s to close with me during my shifts at night after high school. First day there, I introduced myself, blah, blah, blah. Halfway through the shift, a woman orders a sandwich with no mayo. The woman puts mayo on it. I took it back and asked her to remake it. She takes off the ingredients and smears off the mayo on the counter and starts putting the other stuff back on it. I told her, you're not going to seriously do that, are you? And she was like, why, what's wrong with it? As soon as she put it back in my hands, I told her she was fired. She starts laughing. You're going to fire me? You're a kid. I said, sure, I'm a kid, but I'm also your manager. She called the owner. I told them what happened. They said they trusted my judgment, and away she went. I think back on it now. If a 17-year-old was my manager and I was that old and they fired me, I would probably hang myself. Story 48. Was the business manager for a local computer store several years back, but this story is about the main manager. Guy comes in and is furious because his Mac won't work. Looks like liquid damage. Swears up and down. It's because we sold him a faulty machine a few weeks back. He wants a full refund and is screaming in my face about it. Finally, he says, I want to speak to your manager, because ain't no goddamn woman know crap about computers. I smile a little, tell him no problem, step in the back and grab my manager. And out walks a tiny little girl, heavily pregnant, big smile on her face because she's been watching the cameras. He spluttered out something about asking his kids about spilling stuff on his computer and is never seen again. Story 49. I used to be a manager at Domino's when I was 18 and 19. Naturally, most people didn't think I was the manager. And it was funny explaining, one night I get a call, and the man said his pizza was made wrong the day previously. I said that there was nothing I could do and that he should have came in or called when he got the pizza. Obviously, he was trying to get free pizza. Well, he asked if he could bring the pizza in and asked if I could make another after that. I figured I could have some fun and told him to come in. Well, he walks into the door and starts talking to one of our delivery drivers who had no idea what to do in the situation, so she asked me. I start talking to him and he brought in an empty pizza box. No pizza in the box. He was completely serious. I held in my laughter and told him that honestly there was nothing we could do for him. Bringing a pizza box and does nothing better than telling me, you ate pizza some time ago. He gets extremely angry and starts yelling, telling me that he wants to speak to a manager. I told him that I was the manager. He laughed and told me to get the actual manager. At this point, I said, all right, and told him the manager would be with him shortly. I let him sit there for about 30-45 minutes. I walked over and asked him if he was ready to talk to the manager. Once again, he said the same thing. I raised my voice and said, sir, I am the manager. Story 50. MCDs on a night shift had a regular crew member and a trainee shift manager on tills, who was a bit older than me, but also I guess I looked younger than I am. I spotted a clearly unhappy customer heading back with his food, so I intercepted him with a, hi there, can I help? He said he'd like to speak to the manager, and I told him I was the manager, and he said, you're no the manager, he's the manager, pointing to the trainee. I kind of shrugged and let him stagger off to speak to the trainee manager, who immediately sent him back to me. Despite that, I still don't think he fully believed I was the guy in charge, but he was fairly drunk. What is your, but I am the manager story? Story 1, along the same lines. I was at my first trade show for a product I invented. It hit the market in Feb, and the trade show was Valmont Febi 26. A guy came to our booth and cocky told us that he'd seen our product before, and he didn't like crap made in China. I literally laughed in his face. I said, I invented it. I'd make it in the US, and it's only been available for 2 weeks. He just looked at me suspiciously and walked away. Story 2. Giving an interview for a restaurant job. The guy has a ton of experience and seems like he's more than capable of it. Only thing is, he's a job hopper. Worked at something like 10 other restaurants in town in the last year and a half. I asked him about it, why he was in and out of all these places, and he says, oh, I keep getting into conflicts with people. I really just am not good with rules. I prefer to do things my own way. I never get along with management. So, in case the fact that I'm interviewing you didn't give it away, I am the manager here. He lost all color in his face and thanked me for my time. Story 3. I work in a retail outlet store. We receive all the older merchandises from the main stores in the district so they can make room for newer collections. And we sell the old stock at a reduced price. There's nothing wrong with the clothing, it's just from an older collection. However, because of the reduced price, everything is final sale. We won't take returns or exchanges. Before every transaction at the cash, we remind the customer that their purchase will be final sale, no exchange, no return. And then once the transaction is completed, we stamp their receipt with final sale. Of course, sometimes exceptions can be made. If the item is defective or the customer is really nice, we will make an exception. Anyways, one day a lady comes in and I can tell she's one of those customers. Cuts me off as I'm greeting her to tell me that she wants to return an item because it didn't fit her or something like that. I explained to her that, look, I'm sorry, madam, but there's nothing that I can do. Everything is final sale. She replies that she was never told this. I take a look at her receipt and I see that it's been stamped final sale. So I tell her, look, madam, somebody must have told you because your receipt is even stamped. Immediately she goes off on me, yelling, screaming, swearing, saying how incompetent I am, and that's why I'm working in retail, because I can't find another job and blah, blah, blah. The whole time I'm just staring at her. She finally finishes her tirade by saying that she shouldn't listen to a lowly employee like me, and then she asks for the manager. I cleared my throat. I looked her dead in the eye with a grin on my face. I'm very sorry for you right now, but I am the manager. She just deflated. All the gusto goes out of her, swears under her breath and leaves the store. The part that really gets me, though, is that the shirt she was trying to return, it cost $5. But it was the best moment of my entire part-time retail career. Story 4. Working night shifts at a gas station, my coworker's sister came into the store trying to buy cigarettes without an ID. I didn't say anything about it. He rejected the sale just cause he could. Using the excuse, the manager may chew my ass out, she responded with something along the lines of, how would he know? I chime in coolly with, I'm the manager. Story 5. Not the manager, but was in charge. Working in a kitchen and whoever was on the close ran the shift. I ran close 2 or 3 times a week, depending. I rocked into work one day, started doing my crap and doling out tasks as and when they needed doing. One of the newer staff members decided they weren't following my orders because I wasn't any higher up the food chain than they were in their eyes. Dude, why should I do that? You're not a manager. I'm gonna carry on doing my job. Which at the time consisted of standing around waiting because it was about 10 p.m. on a Monday evening. And nobody was ordering food. Nah, man, I'm on the close, so it's my kitchen. We need to get this place cleaned, and I'm allowed to delegate roles. You're lucky I've given you an easy job, really. You could be doing what Gary's gotta do, where you're guaranteed to get first-degree burns if you're not careful. Duck you. I've told you, I'm not listening to you. I'm done in 2 hours, and you've got no power over me. Actual manager walks by at this point. Hey kid, this is Dave's kitchen for the night. If he tells you to do something, you do it. He can run a kitchen better than I can. And if I have to come in here to make you do some actual work, I'll make sure he gets you cleaning behind the grills. It's always fun to see a lazy worker get reamed for being an idiot. Story 6. I used to run a bar. I'd usually be in the office or supervising, but I got bored one night and covered the bar whilst the bartenders went out for a smoke break. This woman comes up with her friends and quickly becomes an annoying customer. Takes forever to decide on drinks, keeps trying to get free shots, trying to haggle on drinks prices, all while being rather rude. I start to get irate as the bar starts to get busy. More and more customers are trying to get drinks, but this woman will not decide what she wants. Eventually, I tell her that there are other people waiting to be served, and I'll come back to her once she's ready to order. That crap did not go down well. The woman starts shouting at me, saying how she could take as long as she wanted. She was there first, blah, blah, blah. She ended her ranting saying that she didn't want to speak to a crap bartender anymore and demanded to see my manager. I obliged, went into the office, a door right next to the bar, waited for 30 seconds before coming out, went back to the woman and said, I hear you've been having an issue with a member of my staff. Her, is this a ducking joke? I said to go and get your manager. Me, you're looking at him, love. And seeing as you've wasted my time and all the good folks' time, you can wait till everyone is served before you. The look on her face was priceless. She began swearing at me profusely, even tried to throw someone else's drink over me. By that point, I had more than enough reason to throw her out of the bar, which I did, to the delight of the other patrons. I was tipped well after that, but I put that crap in the tip jar because managers don't get tips. At least the bar staff got some money and a laugh out of it. Story 7. Not exactly the same, but I saw an argument in my university once. An undergrad was so sure of his position that he referenced a book he had to prove his point. The person he was arguing with wrote the book. It was above efficient airfoils in an aerodynamics class. On the other spectrum, my boss a few years ago would ask the secretary to do something, and one time she was like, "Nah, we won't be doing that." And he was all like, "But I thought I was the boss," and walked away with his head down. Story 8. I run a textbook rental store. A chick comes in with books so overdue that she has a $260 late fee. I wasn't going to make her pay that, but the only way to pull that off without hardcore unbalancing my drawer was to have her pay the replacement fee so that she owned the books, then sell them back to the store. I knew the sellback prices, so I knew she'd get out of the store paying less than $40 as her late fee. However, when I suggested this plan, Karen went ape crap. She starts talking about how she didn't know the due date. It's on the receipt we give them, and I send out 2 reminder emails. If you didn't get the email, sucks to be you, and that it's not fair, not fair, not fair. When I pointed out to her that our store stickers were on her textbooks, which would have been a reminder of where she got them, and that there's a due date, she asked to see the manager. I probably shouldn't have, but I actually walked to the back of the store and then walked back up with a big fake smile on and said, "Hello, I'm the manager. What can I help you with?" She was livid. She tried to pull some, "I manage a store too," like bullcrap, but I cut her off and said, "If you manage a store as well, then you understand that this is a business. I have policy to follow. No one at this store is your mother, and you are a college student. If you can't remember due dates, you got problems, girl." Cue this old chestnut. "I am never coming to this store again. None of my friends are ever coming here again." I told her good, "Go write a Yelp review." Karen. Story 9 was being trained as a manager a few months ago. On my first day managing the floor by myself, a customer from earlier in the day came by demanding to speak to the manager on duty because we royally ducked up her $45 order and that we had to replace everything. Now, I'm a rather petite lady and I have a baby face. Didn't have a manager shirt yet, my size had to be custom ordered, but I was a full-fledged manager. I said I was the manager and asked what her name was so I could check my problem customer book in the office and see if her name was there. It wasn't. No problem, I just asked to see her receipt. Surprise, surprise, she doesn't have a receipt from 2 hours ago. Sorry, lady. You aren't in the problem book and you don't have a receipt. Best I can do is some free food coupons, like ice cream or a free sandwich. She asked to speak to the manager. "Honey, I am the manager tonight." She said I was inadequate as a manager and that I deserved to be fired or something. I'm paraphrasing here. Told her I was sorry, but I couldn't replace her order, and at most I could give her 1 free meal. She screeched and stormed out. Story 10. Not a retail story, but a manager story. I'm a manager of a manufacturing company. Since I have been here, we have had an issue with an employee. Basically, he is a sleazy bully who picks on people and likes bossing people he shouldn't be bossing. It has escalated since I joined a management team, and last Thursday it took a turn for the worst. He so pushed a guy he works with, a guy who is very hard of hearing, that there almost was a fight. Big dude, tall and heavy and strong, was almost in tears when I took him in my office because the sleazebag had finally gotten to him. He had specifically used big dude's hearing damage to pick at him. And the incident was about the bully making fun of big dude's lack of hearing. Not ducking. Okay, you don't make fun of people's disabilities at work. Dude is a great worker. He deserves no crap just because he doesn't hear too well. I gotta take the sleazebag into my office one final time. I had taken him in there many times before. Those times he just smiled and asked me to point to any particular incidents. This time he did the same thing, but I told him to go home immediately, call his union rep, and return on Friday. The look on his face when he realized I had finally had enough of his crap was priceless. I'm going to go out and ask him for his union rep's details now. I'm going to savor the look on his face as he feels the noose tighten. Of course, the mother ducker knows it won't be cheap for us to get rid of him. He has been banking on that, keeping him employed for a long while. But I, and the whole rest of the management team, don't give a flying duck anymore. So what it might cost us $100K to get rid of him? I don't care. That's cheap compared to the damage he has already done. We are sitting down with our lawyer tomorrow. Then we're firing that dirty piece of crap bully. Fired the mother ducker today, gave him a severance package to avoid court. Totally worth it. Story 11. This happens to me all the time, actually. I'm an attorney, but I'm pretty young and I look like I'm about 17 years old. When I talk to other lawyers I work with on stuff or against, I constantly get stuff like, "We'll wait until we hear from your legal counsel to respond." And then I gently remind them that, hey, I am that legal counsel. Story 12. My story comes from the customer side. Was moving out of state and called Comcast to find out where I drop off my equipment. They gave me a location based on my address. So I take my equipment to that location, about 25 minutes away. I wait in line for an hour and a half, finally get up to the window, and I'm told that the person over the phone gave me the wrong location. I needed to take it to an office 5 minutes away in the opposite direction from where I lived. I argued and was asked to step out of line. I refused and called the 800 number. Got to a customer service rep who confirmed that I was at the right location. Put it on speaker so the counter employee could hear the rep over the phone. Counter employee still refused to take the equipment. I asked for a manager. Counter employee left and returned with someone who was clearly not that manager. The manager told me her name. I asked the service rep on the phone if he could look up the name of the manager at this location. After 2 minutes, he told me that it was a different woman. I asked for the real manager and was told by the second woman, I am the real manager. I asked for the real manager by name and the 2 women behind the counter became belligerent and refused to get her. I left my equipment and the counter and turned to walk out when one of the women yelled and said I'd have to pay for it if some random person took it. I pointed to the cameras and told them that there was video proof the equipment was in their possession and walked out of the building. A few days later, I got a call from Comcast corporate. The phone service rep had put in some kind of red flag report and someone viewed the security footage. Corporate confirmed that neither woman I dealt with were managers and both had been reprimanded. Then they gave me $20 credit on my final bill. Duck Comcast. Story 13. Worked as a teller supervisor for about 8 months. I wasn't the highest person in chain of management, but because I closed, the branch manager was gone pretty quick after I got in. So there was this one jackass customer in the drive-through lane, and he wanted to cash a check not drawn off of us. He had an account with us, but it was overdrawn a good bit. I had already been there for about 5 or so months at this point and had never seen this guy before. After looking over everything, I proceeded to tell him that I unfortunately wouldn't be able to give him cash, but if he wanted to deposit it, his money would go in that night. He got visibly angry with me and proceeded to tell me he didn't care and wanted to cash it anyways. I once again told him that we wouldn't be able to do that, but told him he could take it to the bank it was drawn off of, which was right down the street, and see if they would cash it. He gets even more angry at this point and pulls out a stack of hundreds, tells me to deposit it to make his account positive, and then cash the check. I explained to him our policies again, and even though I could budge a little, he was being a douche, so I said no. He then asks to speak to the manager on duty. I tell him it will be 1 moment while I grab him. I do a little 360 and tell him that my manager has left for the day, leaving me the manager in charge. I give his option one more time and he deposits the check and leaves. I have never felt more triumphant in my life than at that moment. Story 14. I was working as an inventory manager at a large chain. 2 people had called in, and we were so shorthanded that I was getting sweaty helping to unload a truck. I got a call that a customer wanted to speak to a manager, so I quickly pinned on my name tag. We don't wear one while moving boxes because snags and ripped shirts, and went out to the floor. I greet the customer and ask her how I can help. She eyes me skeptically. I'm flushed and sweaty and dusty, not looking very managerial. She points to my name tag and says, "That says supervisor. Is there an actual manager here?" I look down. "Oops, old name tag." I say, "Excuse me, 1 moment, please." I go in back and put on my manager name tag. Take a second to tidy myself up, walk back out with a big smile. "Just got promoted. How can I help you today? Story 15. I used to work overnights doing phone support for a major quick service restaurant or fast food. Technically, my position was second level, which meant that I was responsible for answering level 1 questions, taking escalations, and ordering hardware for sites. Due to the unique nature of my position, though, I was also given permission to act as a supervisor, which brought a whole lot of different responsibilities, but most importantly for this story, made me the person you spoke to when you asked to speak with a supervisor. Because I was still taking level 1 calls, I got plenty of opportunities to pull the "I'm the acting supervisor" line. There were technically 2 level 2 techs for the overnight shift, but due to our schedules, we only shared 3 days we worked the same night. The most memorable encounter I had was one of the nights my fellow L2 tech was off. Guy calls up, says that his registers are showing that they are offline. I try to ping out to the server. No response. At this point, it's pretty easy to determine what's going on just from experience. Registers are offline. They don't have a direct connection to the internet. Only the back-end server. Server can't be pinged. Something is going on with the server. I have him reboot it, wait about 5 minutes, try to ping out again. No dice. At this point, I should mention that the guy I'm talking to is absolutely adamant. It's an internet issue, and I keep trying to explain to him as simply as possible why we're going through the process we are. I obliged his request quickly by having him check the internet on the manager PC, good, and had him swap cables. Still not connecting was pinging. So at the stage we're at now, I need him to connect a monitor to the server so we can see what is happening. After enough prodding and him getting all upset, he finally connects the monitor to the server, and we get our error message, "No boot device found." At this point, I need to send a tech out to the site. Well, he wasn't having none of that. Immediately blew up, telling me that it's my fault the server is down, that I should just check the internet, that I'm causing him to lose money, that he is personally going to sue me, etc. Finally, he pulls the card and says he wants to speak with the supervisor. So I explained to him that I'm the acting supervisor on duty, and he immediately hangs up. Not a minute later, one of my coworkers is calling me over, saying he has someone on the line that's very upset and wants to speak with a supervisor. I come over, answer the line, and he just lets out this loud, drawn-out phew before hanging up again. Minute later, same thing. Guy wants to speak with a supervisor. At this point, this guy is just kind of harassing us. So I tell the coworker who answered the phone to tell him that one isn't available right now, but he can leave a message. Guy isn't having it, says, "I'll wait, just put me on hold." So we oblige him. Put him on hold, and on hold, he remained for 5 minutes. I figured, incorrectly, he might calm down by that point and ask the line as a supervisor. That's when he decided to go on an epithet. Again, me, against my coworkers, and I guess anyone else he might have had encountered that day. At that point, that's when I disconnected the call and wrote a very quick email to our corporate liaison, as well as a few of the heads within corporate whom we had contact with. Turns out that this guy was the franchisee, store owner, and he had been warned about this kind of behavior before by corporate in the past when he had a similar incident with a prior help desk. Guy ended up losing his franchise like 3 weeks later because of that incident. Story 16. Obligatory. Not a manager, but nonetheless relevant, since it involves shutting people down from a position of authority. So I work for an anime convention. There is an incredible amount of drama and rumors that go around. It is insane. So this was a couple of years ago, and I happened to be waiting for an elevator with 2 girls who are talking about my convention's future. It's Sunday. It could be a 10 or 15-minute wait. And one of them says, "Oh, I am so glad. Convention is moving back to the Hyatt next year." We weren't. It wasn't big enough to hold us anymore. And it's always better to quash rumors before they have a chance to circulate too much. So I politely say, "Actually, it's going to be here again." I get these obnoxious know-it-all looks from both of them. One of them goes, "No, it's not. I heard it from my friend on security." Oh, so now it's a I know someone game. But my direct boss is the owner of the convention. I have held hotel contracts for the next 3 years in my hands. I know where it will be held, but I don't want to pull the "I know someone higher up than you" crap. That's petty. So instead I say, "Why don't you email in and settle this for us?" We've got the time, so she pulls out her phone, goes to our website, finds the contact page, and starts typing out an email. She hits send. A few seconds later, my phone beeps. I've got a new email. I open it. It's clearly from her. It says, convention is moving back to the Hyatt next year, right? I type back no and hit send. Most satisfying no by a long shot. Story 17. Worked at a Papa John's around a year ago, and typically about 40% of customers would come in to complain just to get free food, and we'd usually just give in because it's not worth arguing. I got my pizza, and there were 3 slices missing. Like, okay, whatever you say. And we'd also get the people who obviously hated their lives so much that they felt the need to belittle every worker there. And that's exactly what happened. I'm almost done with my shift. It's me and another manager working. This guy and his son, who was dressed in baseball attire, came in, obviously just lost a game because you can see it in both of their faces. Guy goes, "Where's my thick crust pizza my wife ordered on the phone?" My other manager apologizes because she thought the lady said thin crust, which is an honest mistake because we don't even have thick crust. She offers him the mess-up pizza, breadsticks, and their original order. Dude goes from pissed off look to "Where's the manager?" We both are, sir. Well, I'm surprised they hired dumb idiot like her here. And the son chimes in talking crap too. Mind you, this kid is like 10 crap talking adults. I ask him politely to leave, and then he proceeds to call my coworker a dumb ducker. I was so appalled. I was so close to fighting this guy because the girl was the sweetest person ever. But yeah, long story short, baseball dads are S story 18. So I used to work at a huge chain tool store. A month after I started, I was promoted to a key holder. And 2 months after that, I was made a supervisor. This made me in charge when it was the manager's day off. At the time, I was a 150 kilo female that looked about 12. A lot of people in the building industry are very rude and don't like the opinion of females. My father's a builder, so I had basic knowledge of how everything works, and I'm good at helping customers find what they need. One day, a gentleman spoke to my colleague, a clueless 18-year-old male, about getting guttering for his house. Gutters are the pipes that go around the edge of your roof and transport rainwater. My colleague didn't really know how to help him, so he asked me to help. The customer, a 50-year-old grumpy male, gave me one look and immediately asked if he could speak to someone else. I shrugged and got another colleague. He helped the man find the right items, and the man suddenly brings out blueprints of his house and asks my colleague to help him calculate how much gutter pipes he needed. My colleague was about 30, and not the brightest bulb. I left them to it and went to help another customer. The customer I went to was a regular and immediately started praising me about how he was sure I could help him find a replacement for some tiny weird bolt for his sink. After a few minutes of looking through some boxes, we found the right one, and he continued to praise me, even going so far as to tell the other customer how brilliant I was. The other customer immediately got annoyed. Apparently, he couldn't tolerate a girl knowing anything about his profession. He immediately asked my colleague to speak to whoever was in charge because they weren't getting anywhere. My colleague stared at me. After finishing with my own customer, I went back to Mr. Grumpy Pants. "How can I help, sir?" He paled a bit and obviously realized the situation. He then asked if I'd be so kind to help him work out how much pipe he needed. Much to the relief of my colleague, I took over, and after 20 minutes with a ruler and a calculator, we had the back of his van loaded with pipes, and off he went. My colleagues were impressed with my ability to handle the customer. But what shocked us all the most was, not 5 minutes later, the man returned with a box of ice creams for all of us to share, and it was the middle of summer, and the warehouse we worked in was sweltering. To make things even better, a week later, he came back in for some other items and told us how he had ended up with the perfect amount of gutter and apologized to me. It's situations like that that made me really enjoy retail, and sometimes I even miss it. Story 19. Helped to open a new restaurant and started out as a grill cook. Fast forward 3 months later, the assistant general manager resigns and they offer me the position. Since I came up through the ranks with everyone I worked with, I was a pretty laid-back manager and the employees, and I had a mutual respect. Anytime something needed to be done, I would hop onto the grill, grab a drink order, help hostesses or clean up here and there. One night near closing time, the old manager comes in. No problem. Chat for a bit. Some of the staff chats for a bit, and everyone generally goes on their way and gets their closing routine finished up. I go to office to start working on my paperwork and cashing out the waitstaff, come back out an hour after closing expecting to be ready for a final walkthrough, and I find out that the grill is still on. A lot of places this wouldn't be too big a deal, but we're a Mongolian BBQ. Our grill is a 6-foot diameter steel circle that takes 30 minutes to cool down before you can clean it. I start looking around for my grill cook, the only one left, and find him on the patio smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer. Me. Joe, why haven't you started cleaning the grill? We closed an hour ago, Joe. I'll do it when I finish my beer. No, go do it now. Everyone else is done, and now we're stuck here until you get it cleaned up. Joe. Duck you, Karen. I'll do it when I finish my beer. Me. Not gonna work either. Put the beer down and clean the grill, or put the beer down and go home. I'll have Big Boss call you tomorrow to see if you still have a job. Joe. Whatever, you can't fire me. Me. Walks over, takes beer, dumps it out. I'm your manager, and I promise that I can in fact fire you. Have a good night, Joe. Go home. Walk inside, lock door to patio, and proceed to clean grill. Called the GM the next day to let him know what happened, and he backed me entirely. I think he even tried to come into work that night, and Big Boss had him escorted off the property. Story 20. My favorite is a common one. I'm the youngest in my store by 30 plus years. Customer asks about price of product, says, "Are you sure?" and walks off. Usually 5 minutes later, I will see them talking to a coworker, asking about price, and coworker yells, "Diabetes. Can you check price on?" I walk over smiling and just say the same price I said before, seeing the look of shame that they didn't trust me because I am a young crap. Story 21. I'm the head lifeguard of a beach, and we don't allow boats to dock or drop anchor within 100 feet of our swim area and beach. It's partially a safety thing because boats can drift, and if people are fishing, the hooks could come into the swim area, never a good time. It's also because the sheriff needs to have full access to the beach, which is made more difficult on days when boats surround the beach. One day, a family comes to dock right off the beach, right alongside the buoys and lining that separates the swim area from the lake. I had just gotten off the lifeguard stand, so I immediately walked over to explain to them that they need to move their boat. The mother starts swearing at me, telling me that her husband was the president of the homeowner association for the neighborhood across the lake. Just as a side note, the other side of the lake is another city, but the whole lake is owned by the city I worked for. I told her that it didn't matter who they were. It was a city ordinance and county ordinance that they couldn't be so close. The dad begins to threaten me. I immediately radioed to a coworker to call the police, and the mother demands to speak to the manager because she's going to get me fired. I very calmly informed her that I was the manager of the beach and the entire park that's spread out behind the beach, and I was the one who made the ultimate decision in any dispute. The mother was so incensed by this that she jumped out of the boat, which was trespassing because you have to pay to enter the beach and park, and got in my face to start threatening me and pushing me. Luckily, the police station was fairly close to the park, so as she was doing this, the police pulled up into the parking lot. My coworker and several patrons had begun to record all of this as well. One of the children on the boat noticed that the police were walking towards us, and she started crying that she didn't want to go to jail. I informed the woman that she was trespassing and that if she continued to yell at me, I would press charges for assault. She booked it back into the boat, and they took off, but the police had gotten the serial number of the boat. I think they brought charges of trespassing, assault, threatening a city worker, and resisting arrest against the mother and father. Don't duck with the head lifeguard of a beach, because they're usually friends with the local law enforcement and can get every possible charge brought. Story 22. I was the foreman for a asbestos abatement company. Basically the guys that demolish anything made of hazardous materials. Anyway, we get this massive job, doing a whole skyscraper downtown. So we hire 40 new guys, and instead of mixing old and new guys so things run smooth, they lump me with all 40 of the new guys. Well, first day there, and I'm doing my job, giving orders and telling people proper safety protocols and blah blah. Then I go into this back room where about 12 guys are taking out fluorescent lights, mercury and PCBS, and this guy is standing on rolling scaffold without rails, pulling himself from light to light. He is 6 feet in the air without handrails, using a scaffold as a skateboard. Big no-no. So I tell him, get down between lights, you'll get a fine for that, and Oz is here today. He ignores me. I figure whatever, I'll write him up later. So I keep going in that room because they were doing everything wrong. All new guys, remember? Until finally the owner and supervisor come through and see 2 guys doing nothing and chatting. Supervisor is pissed, so yells, "Stop talking about getting each other off and get to work." Everyone turns to look and is like, "Duck." I giggle. This guy that was chatting happens to be Scaffold's skateboard guy. He, in his infinite wisdom, decides to turn to our Canadian supervisor, and from his dumb ducking mouth says, "Well, that kid is just telling everyone what to do like he's the boss, and he's doing nothing," while pointing at me. At this point, I realize they weren't in the meeting this morning. They have no idea who I am. The supervisor and the owner both point at me and say, "Him, he is your ducking boss." Everyone in the room turns to look at me with a look of sheer and utter shock. I laughed about it for weeks. One of the guys who was an idiot and wouldn't listen to me earlier ended up becoming a great friend to this day. I was 17. I started there right out of high school and got promoted to foreman after 6 months. That industry has a lot of useless people, so it's not nearly as impressive as it sounds. Story 23. I used to have a tile installation company I ran with my partner, whom we both also did the labor for. We had some interesting advertising and ended up getting called to a local Mall's pizza place. The owner of the place wanted us to demo about a 2-foot perimeter around the entire kitchen, put down a waterproofing membrane, and then tile back over it. I was also fairly young at the time, in my early 20s. He had got me off my website advertising on Google, I believe. Long story short, the first night into the demo, because we had to work overnight as to not disrupt his work hours during the day, we ran into a rather large rat infestation while taking up the tile trim he had. Demoing that generally takes the sheetrock behind it off also, especially if it wasn't installed correctly to begin with. I'm not an exterminator. It's not my job to deal with 20+ live rats and multiple ones either. I was grossed out beyond belief and let him know I'll be back tomorrow night. Call the exterminator to get that crap taken care of. What an asshat. I don't know about health standards, but it couldn't be sanitary. Being a day in the ground, I didn't want to waste any more time and proceeded to work around it. The owner ends up showing up to sort of check out the work we're doing at like 4 in the morning. When we've had a long night of cat and mouse already and I was not in the mood for any of his Tom Duckery. He brought me outside to let me know I need to keep it clean in there, and he expects his kitchen to be the way he left it. Understandable, but he was such a huge idiot about it. I told him, "You left your kitchen filthy, and you have a rat issue, dude. You want it left like that? I was gonna clean up a bit at the very least because it's disgusting, and I don't appreciate you leaving dead rats everywhere for me to pick up. Did you cook like that? Because it's ducking sick." He ended up telling me how entirely unprofessional this is, and how he's gonna talk to my boss and tell him how lousy I've made this experience for him and blah, blah, blah. In fact, he wants to talk to my boss right now at 4 in the morning. So I proceeded to hand him a business card with all the contact information for the owner. He started calling, and when the phone in my pocket rang and I answered, letting him know I was the owner, he had this look on his face of being completely dumbfounded. I will never forget it.